Craig Smoak.
All right, Craig will join us momentarily. Jack McKenzie, Armstrong Sims in the studio. Running the mothership, David Smoak, Paul Catalina, Sikkim 365 Radio, and also 365 Sports. Sam Mays, All-American at Oklahoma State, also on the radio in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Played at Oklahoma State and Baylor, Oklahoma State, round 2 this Saturday at AT&T Stadium. He joins us on Sikkim 365 Radio. Sam, I want to get into a lot of things with you, but that first game in Stillwater, Oklahoma State came out and bloodied Baylor early. It was tight at the end, down to the end. Your thoughts about these two teams in round 2?
Well, first let me say this. The Baylor Bears have brought back a toughness to Big 12 football that I'm obsessed with. I love what Matt Rule did 2 years ago, and I feel like Dave Aranda has come in and kept that same tone to it. I played in the Big 12. That was the best conference in college football, and it was filled with teams like the Baylor Bears of this year. Teams that aren't the biggest, aren't the fastest, aren't the strongest, but they are tough as nails. Rule set that mindset a couple of years ago, and Aranda has just kept it going. So I'm a huge fan of Baylor football this season. And I also said several times on my radio shows over the last several weeks is that Oklahoma State got lucky to get them early, right? I think the Cowboys finding Baylor early this season allowed them to have the way that they did with them, because I can't guarantee you that they're going to see the same Baylor team this weekend. So it is they're good, man. That's a very good football team. And Oklahoma State's also gotten a lot better this year, offensively in particular. Sanders looks like he's actually in the offense and not riding on the offense, if that makes any sense, right? Like, this is a kid that he's not a great quarterback. He's not a great passer, but he is one hell of a football player, and he looks like he's captaining his football team for the first time successfully. So I think both teams deserve to be in the game that they're in. I think both teams have plenty of reason to believe that they can win, and I think this is going to be one of the better championship games we've seen all season long.
Sam, Oklahoma State reinvented their whole identity over the last couple of years, and it's not easy for teams to do. And what was it about was it Spencer Sanders and the fact that they needed to morph things for him on offense, so he maybe wasn't such a turnover waiting to happen? Was it just where the talent was that made Mike Gundy make this shift?
I think it was probably a little bit of both, right? I think if you watch the first couple of games of the season, you saw him struggle, look uncomfortable in the pocket. Although everything that he said to us at Big 12 Media Days made us believe that he felt pretty good about his new quarterback coach, Tim Rattay. And so when I watched the first 2 games, I'm like, man, I'm not seeing the excitement in your voice in these first couple of games. And then you see Mike Gundy make that switch around that Boise State game where he recognizes some running back talent. That Warren kid is exceptional there in Stillwater. And the offensive line, I think when they're healthy, are getting the job done in a huge way in this conference as far as running the football is concerned. So he was relying on what he knows he can do well. And I think when you looked at Sanders throughout this season, not only has he gotten more involved in the run game, ad-libbing and also organized runs, but he's got a receiving core that was relatively unproven coming into the season that is just bailing him out left and right. Like, I had to laugh. The blackout game, I'm sitting in the stands watching it because I'm a complete lunatic about my team. And it was the worst opening scoring drive I've ever, seen ever. Like, it was brutal. I mean, he's missing assignments. He ran the wrong way in a fake. There's a missed block. He had to, and they're just finding a way to bumble and fumble and stumble away down the field. Receivers making ignorant, ridiculous catches that they should never make, and they're doing it for him. He's got this incredible support staff, and I think it's really helping him come along. Like, Oklahoma State is a double threat. There's no doubt. Like, everybody wants to talk about that defense, but the offense is physical and will absolutely punch you in the mouth. The question is, what is the B plan if A plan doesn't work? Well, here in the last 5 weeks, I think the schedule has kind of allowed them to run their A plan successfully. Even Oklahoma had a hard time getting them off the mark with that. I think Baylor probably a little bit different when it comes to how organized they are. I think Aranda is a hell of a football coach, and from an X and O standpoint, probably poses the biggest threat at this point in the season to locking up Mike Gundy's offense.
Sam, I got to just
Okay.
Sam, I got to know just from your standpoint, I mean, you talked about watching the games and how into it. I mean, what was Saturday night like then? I mean, watching a game like that, and when Caleb Williams broke loose on that long run, he eventually ran out of gas. What was going through your mind?
Well, so I am I would say that probably every Baylor Bear in the era that I played would agree to this, but we all have PTSD from Vince Young, right?
Yeah.
And so when I watch Caleb Williams play, and I hate to say it because Vince was a force of nature, right? Just built different. Like, that's what this Williams kid brings to the table. And so as I'm watching him run down the field, I'm having flashbacks to 10 do the same thing in Stillwater, because I'm part of that Oklahoma State group that had, and it's the only team that I didn't beat in the Big 12 was Texas, and we had them on the ropes 3 straight years. I'm talking big leads, big leads. And so watching that kid do that, I thought to myself, well, this is the only reason Oklahoma State didn't drag Oklahoma off that field is because of Caleb Williams. And so when he's making that run, I'm thinking, does he have enough? Can this young man find a way to carry his team into another rivalry game victory like he did against Texas? And he really kind of made you believe he had the opportunity to do so. But the Cowboy defense found a way to keep them bottled up. But if Spencer Rattler starts that game, boys, that's a 40-14, 40-10 type of thing. Like, they blow them out of the water. Caleb Williams is built a little different, and I think that's kind of what you look to Baylor this weekend. You know, is Bohannon healthy? One, and if he is he up to that challenge? Because that defense is that special. Like, that's what it's going to take, is an individual effort from him that is just of a magnitude that maybe he's never hit before. He needs to be special this weekend if he's going to beat Oklahoma State.
How about Oklahoma State? Baylor in the championship game. There is no Oklahoma, although they were an eyelash from being there again. And no Texas, and we know the kind of year that they've had as well. You think there's a little bit of camaraderie among the remaining 8 that's kind of cool that one of or 2 of those 8 are a part of this game?
Oh, yeah. No, it gives me goosebumps just kind of thinking about it. Like, I love the fact that in a year where this league, you know, this was the best league in college football at one point in the last 20 years, and what's happened to it is devastating to players like me who wore the Big 12 patch with a lot of pride. And to see, you know, those 2 teams bail the way they did and kind of leave the rest of this league in the lurch with no really certain future is pretty terrible. But to see them both get left out of a championship game is amazing. And year number 1, right? And it doesn't look like it's going to be any easier next year, right? Riley's gone now. Texas just sucks. They're terrible. It looks like it might be those 2 teams that are going to miss out again, right? So I'm thrilled about it. It's good to see the league look as good as they did in the middle this year.
Sam Mays, former All-American at Oklahoma State, with us on Sikkim 365 Radio.
So Baylor's got a pretty good defense. Dave Aranda knows a thing or two, but I can only imagine the conversations he and Jim Knowles must have had over the years, and he talked about those 2 chopping it up and just talking football. I mean, obviously, Sam, a lot of people have been, you know, shining praise or giving praise to the Oklahoma State defense. But from your standpoint, just watching the evolution, watching what Jim Knowles has done, Malcolm Rodriguez just being the freak show that he is, among others. What are your thoughts on this Pokes defense and just what they've done all year long now at this point?
So let me tell you this. 2 years ago in Austin, I watched a second half collapse of the Jim Knowles defense that had me so mad that I wanted him fired. Like, I'm on Monday, I'm like, and that's his first year, I think, or maybe his second year. On the second year, I'm thinking, this guy, he can't be here. He's got to go. And he came in with all this arrogance and cockiness, if you remember, like he had a fix for Big 12 offenses. And I thought it was laughable. And then you fast forward to today, and what he's done is find a way to communicate with his kids in a way that they understand the defense that they're playing. And what I mean by that is it's not a guarantee. Defense is different, right? You've got a bunch of guys out there that are reacting to something else. And that sometimes they're dictating to the offense, but rarely is that the case. Like, they're reacting to what the offense is doing, hoping that the defense that is called is going to put them in the right position. And most of the time, you know, given the parameters of the game, it does. But your guys have got to react correctly. They've got to be in the right place. They've got to see the correct reads to make those things happen. If those kids, if you don't believe in the defense or understand the defense on that level, you're never going to be able to play as fast as you can. So what he's done is find a way to communicate his defense to Oklahoma State's veteran athletes, because they got 13 dudes in that defense that are over the age of 21. Wow. Like, they are old. That is an old man defense. So those kids get in there understanding what each individual role is until they play this unbelievable team game. If you go back and watch the Cowboy defense and the big plays they do give up, there's always a dude there. Like, someone has made a great play, which is why Oklahoma State just gave up a 40-yard pass. It's not because someone's just running free in the defense, right? So, like, they get it. They understand the scheme, the week's worth of preparation per opponent. Oklahoma State is getting more out of this defense from a mental reps than probably they've ever gotten out of a defense. And I think they're probably the best defense in the league based off of their understanding of the opponent coming into the game. And a lot of that 22-year-old Sam Mays is a whole lot different on the football field than 19-year-old Sam Mays. Both were big, fast, and physical, but the older one had way more knowledge and understanding of why I was doing the things that I was doing, which allowed me to play at that reckless pace. That is where you really want to be.
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, and I know that we know the SEC and their history, and we know they've been infiltrated as well by the wide-open offenses. That's obvious. But I had asked Dave Aranda earlier this week about this differences between the Big 12 with what he sees now with some of these programs, including his Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, and others, and the SEC. And he was talking about you just have these guys dripping with 4 and 5 stars, the talent. You just let them go. Let them go make plays. And he talked about how it has to be much more scheme-oriented, and he enjoys that, the chess match more. Would you agree with that, Sam?
No, I would. I would. I think that's kind of the game here is you've got to make, like, I'm going to say that every college coach in a Power 5 position knows what the hell they're doing, right? Like, these dudes got there for a reason. They are X and O guys. They have schemes, they have systems, they have plans that they've executed over the years that allowed them to be head coaches in this league or coordinators in this league. But it's just never a guarantee that they're going to be able to take all that knowledge and give it to their student athletes in a way that is digestible, that they're going to be able to put it onto the football field. So it is, yeah, I agree 100%. It's like, do you have a scheme that your kids are going to gather, make their own, digest it, and understand it in their chest? And second they do that, you get Malcolm Rodriguez flying around it's like he's not even thinking about what he's doing. Mm-hmm. That's how fast that kid plays. That's how fast that kid reacts. And that entire defense is that way. I have no idea how many NFL players are on Oklahoma State's defense right now. I have no clue. I think there's probably 2 or 3 of them. But outside of that, we're not talking about just juggernauts on the physical end. We're talking about a bunch of dudes just play their asses off. They play hard. They run hard. It's 4 quarters of just full commitment. I made the joke the other day that I wanted riding time put on the scoreboard like a wrestling match. Like, that's what it looks like. They grab an opponent and they just refuse to let it go for 60 straight minutes. It's awesome. And that to me is just their overall understanding of the scheme, of the system, and the communication from the sidelines and in halftime, making adjustments. Like, they are just all in sync in Stillwater defensively. All
right. Anything else, guys? Sam, great stuff. Great to have you on, man. Wish you the best. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Sam Mays, former All-American at Oklahoma State, now again with the sports animal in Tulsa. And I'm telling you, the game is more physical now in the Big 12 that I've seen in a long, long time. That doesn't mean there hasn't been teams like that, but it is kind of it's a street fight. It's a back alley brawl. It doesn't mean there can't be some shootouts, but I love what I see, and that's not just being old school. I just love that style. But there are still the opportunities. It could be 40-35 or 45-42 at any time, and we'll see what happens on Saturday. Now,
yeah, it's going to be interesting. Oklahoma State's the favorite. I think last I looked, it was 5.5 to spread, and I'm not sure if that's increased even more. It has a half point more than it was yesterday. And, if Blake Shapen's playing quarterback, man, or even if it is Gary Bohannon, either way, they're going to have a hard time against that defense. And they can't have, guys dropping first down catches, and they're going to have to play a clean, nearly perfect football game, in my opinion, to win this game. I don't know that Oklahoma State has to do the same, but I do think that Baylor has to. And so if they put on the performance they put on last weekend, it's blowout city. They'll get blown out.
Oh, yeah.
They'll get blown out.
Because Oklahoma State's playing at a high level and have now for about a month, where Baylor's had a couple of,
They play the way they did 2 weeks ago, they could probably win the game.
Yeah,
they play the way they played last week, they're going to get blown out.
All right, when we come back, Paul Catalina's Top 5. This is Sick on 365 Radio and 365 Sports. So after the show ended yesterday,